thoughts. I know all week you were in Vegas.
Yep. Great time, too.
Look at Larry. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Man.
Right?
Some big-time steakhouses. We did,
You went to Benihana's, you said.
We did the last night. My buddy Lou Marston hooked us up. We went to Benihana, and Lou took care of the entire table, even people that weren't with us.
Evan and I tried to get to a steakhouse, but we couldn't get past the bar. I'm just kidding. Yeah, we had a good time. We were focused, but it's about you and your calls. And right now, how you feeling, who you blaming in regard to the tragic end to a 49er season, Larry? Because if you're a real fan, I can't tell you how to feel, but this is just me, in my book, my playbook of a fan, getting close. I don't want to hear about, we're going to come back next year and everything's going to be good. Dre Greenlaw, it has Navarro Bowman type of feel to it, and hopefully it's not that, but whoever this DC is coming to take over this defense won't have his services out the gate. And you said it so eloquently early, Larry. Everything's different, man. Tomorrow is not promised. We're talking about injuries, but before I grab these calls and get your thoughts, I want to run this by you. I was listening to Bonta and Shasky yesterday morning.
Right.
And we know they do a great job. And I came out of that game in regard to Brock Purdy as he was not overwhelmed. He did not turn the ball over, Larry. But it's cool now when he's getting 900K. But next year is going to be a big year for him. But they just talked about and had a conversation about Brock Purdy if you were to give him 40, 50, or 30 million. And it blew me away just about what's at stake for him on a personal level, and also maybe behind closed doors what the Niner brass and even Kyle are thinking about this kid. And I say all that to say is next year's going to be a big year for him and his future as the franchise quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers.
And he'll get better. He's going to get better. Why? Because he didn't spend any time this offseason, working with his receivers, getting stronger, getting more sudden, getting more explosive. He talked about this week how he wants to build up his body, get a little stronger, build up his arm strength, build up his athleticism, get a little quicker, grow into more of a pro body. I think you're going to see him be more explosive, not to mention the mental reps that always make you better over time. So I think he'll be better. I'm not, obviously you're going to have to pay him, and right now, if you look at it, this was a roster with Brock making $800,000. Eventually they're going to have to come up with a roster with Brock making $20 million or more and maybe $30 million or more. Who knows? Who knows where it will go financially? But that means a lot of these luxury items, like your
luxury,
expensive fullback,
Debo, Ayuk,
two receivers making $50 million. They're gonna have to trim the fat, and I don't know exactly where they're gonna have to trim. Greenlaw is really interesting because now he blew out the Achilles. Azeez Al-Shaair is a free agent.
I heard they maybe,
and Vrabel and Chris Kiffin might be two names on their DC want list. They're both coming from Tennessee. I could picture Azeez coming back. He was on the field before the Green Bay game. He's invested. Kiffin, found him at Florida Atlantic or wherever as an undrafted guy. Maybe the Niners could get him back in free agency. So it's going to be an interesting offseason. The way they go about things. They let the rank-and-file free agent walk, and they go hunt one or two big-time guys.
There you go. And we'll see how that plays out this offseason. Larry Krueger in for Steiny on Steiny and Guru. Let's go out to Oakland. What's up, Chucky?
Hey, how you guys doing, man? Enjoying the conversation, man.
Thanks.
And Guru, I see you in the captain seat, man. You're doing a good job, brother.
Yeah. Well, Larry, I was like, Larry, you know what? I'll drive, man. You had a long week. I'll go ahead and drive. What you got for us?
Hey, well, I've been listening to you and Steiny all week, man. And I just haven't been liking the narrative, man, on Wilkes, man. I haven't been liking the narrative. Look, he took over when he was hired. Shanahan knew that he was learning the system, and he hired him. And so I want to ask you, what's the most spoken words when in any sport, when you compete, what's the most spoken words after you lose?
We gave it our all.
after you lose, you say run it back.
Oh,
When you lose, you say run it back.
right.
Now he knew he was just learning this guy's defense, and so he made it to the Super Bowl, and I think we all can rest and say that it wasn't truly the defense that lost them that game. If other things would have went their way, they would have won that game. So how you not going to run it back with this first-year defensive coordinator taking over your system? How you not going to run it back and you made it to the Super Bowl? He didn't run it back because, like you and Sonny was saying before the season started, you guys were speaking on Shanahan's arrogance. And it's his arrogance, man, that get in the way of why he even fired Wilkes, man. He arrogant, man. And so until he changed his ways, man, I don't see the 49ers winning the championship. And can you tell me any head coach that won the Super Bowl that you guys would consider arrogant, man?
Appreciate the phone call, and I'll say
Jimmy
this, Larry.
Johnson.
I'm going to keep it real. I'm a black man in America, and I know what Chucky was trying to say, and we know about the second or third chances a lot of these black coaches don't get, but I'm hearing Stephen A., say what he's saying, and I appreciate it, but it just, to me, Larry, it doesn't apply here. Chucky, Wilkes got fired in Minnesota that play before the half. Wilkes got fired when they made his ass come out from the booth and down to the sideline. Wilkes was not perfect. And Larry, all of a sudden, the most invested position on your team was the defensive line, and that was the one that was on the milk carton. And against the Detroit Lions in front of the world, it looked like De La Salle versus James Logan. The Niners were lucky I couldn't believe that was the Niner defense. Now, my point to Chucky and company is you can't fire all the players, but whatever was going on, Larry, there was a disconnect because that defense against Detroit. Now, you told me earlier you could throw in the Packers. There was a disconnect. Then we saw, what did you call it, Cadillac lollygagging. So to me, we seen coordinators in this league fired one and done. I just thought it applied to Wilkes, but when you rewind it and, I go to Willard again. I keep bringing Willard up. He was like, Kyle hired him, so we can go there. But, Chucky, I don't get Wilkes was done wrong, man. This defense was something happened, Larry, and I can't explain it.
I mean, if your entire viewing of the Niners was tied to the Super Bowl and you didn't watch the season, then it's easy to sit there and go, what the heck? He's being scapegoated. Why are they scapegoating Steve Wilkes? I will say this. I talked about this on my YouTube channel for 10 days to 2 weeks before the Super Bowl, and that was that what is the Niners' pivot going to be? They're not going to blame themselves.
Right.
Shanahan wasn't going to blame. You think Shanahan's going to come out and be like, hey, you know what? My scheme doesn't work, or I blew it. No. There was always going to be somebody who was going to be the pivot point fall guy. And it was going to be Wilkes. It was obvious it was going to be Wilkes. Now let's talk about Wilkes for a second. He's been a head coach in college. He's 5-6. He's been a head coach in the NFL. He's 9-19. He's coached every year since 1995. The guy has coached 25 years. He's gotten about 10 to 12 different coaching jobs in the NFL. So you could say that Wilkes himself is a retread because he's been all over the place. But I don't know about you, but if I'm hiring somebody and they've got a 25-year career in whatever, and they've worked for 22 different places.
Yeah, that's not,
I look at that and go, why?
That's not a selling point. Some have been calling saying that.
If you worked for 5 different places, okay. You worked for 8 different places, all right. It's 25 years. In 25 years, you worked for 21 different places?
I totally get it.
It makes you wonder if sometimes guys rub other guys wrong with something that has nothing to do with football. I mean, I just think that you always should have looked at anybody who would dust off the Steve Wilkes Wikipedia should have realized that he was going to be a short timer with the Niners anyway. I'm a little surprised that I
don't like what Bosa said too, Larry. Not to cut you off.
Go ahead. What did Bosa say?
We weren't prepared for everything. Wilkes is good on the back end. Just basically taking him out to pasture, knowing you're the man. knowing your words will end this dude's tenure here in San Francisco. But hey, maybe Bosa was saying it. Hey, Guru is my prerogative. I didn't like playing with this guy. He didn't fire us up or whatever. But when you say things like, just in regard to Sunday's Super Bowl game last Sunday, we weren't prepared for everything. Man, you're taking that dude around pasture, man.
That's really bad. But the other one is, and I asked Steve about this in probably like week 5 or week 6. I said, Steve, who's dialing up the games up front? Man. Who's calling the twists? Who's calling the stunts? I thought that was Chris's domain. And he's like, no, I'm calling all that stuff. And they didn't really, last year their NASCAR package was much more effective. This year they didn't. Their games, they played fewer games up front when they went against mobile quarterbacks. I think that's to be expected. But they were less effective in those games up front. So is that on Wilks? He was the one dialing it up. To me, though, the major reason he had to go was that there was more than one example of them speeding up the quarterback and playing soft coverage behind it. So that to me, those things don't jive. You can't play soft coverage if you're speeding up the quarterback. You're just basically giving him wide open targets underneath. And Burrow carved him up, and Cousins carved him up, and in this defense, when push came to shove, got pushed around. On that Green Bay game and that Detroit game, that front got pushed around.
That was shocking.
I don't think some of the young DB. Shocking. What about Luter and Womack's development? I didn't see those guys develop this year. So I like Steve. I had a good dialogue with Steve this year, and I think he's a smart guy, and I know he'll get another job. But I don't think it's like, oh, you know what, he got screwed over. I'm not buying that.
We're going to go out to the calls. Steiny and Guru, Larry in for Steiny. But I will say this, Larry, for Kyle Shanahan the other day to say, oh, you know what, I hadn't even and again, he's a coach. He can do what he wants. But this is just me. When people are coming down your lane and they're questioning your play calling or the offense's inability to put points or capitalize on a great defensive performance, I call that a great defensive performance by the Niners in the Super Bowl. But you say, ask after the game, I don't know what I'm going to do. I ain't had a really chance to talk to the coaches. And then 8 hours later, Wilks is fired. Again, you could have waited 4 days. You could have waited to this Monday or Tuesday. But when you put him, another analogy, Larry, it's like you just took Wilks and let the fans, the bullets from the fans hit Wilks as if you're saying, you know what, the reason we didn't win the Super Bowl was the defense. And that is by far not the truth. And what about this play that Dibbs and Willard pointed out to me that I'd missed in real time? When have you seen a head coach call a timeout on defense? That was it right there. It was done. I didn't say it. I had to go back. Like, Larry, I don't remember ever. Like,
and he was on
fire. Man.
Kyle Shanahan's face during that time.
Goodness.
He was absolutely on fire. He was so pissed off.
But what if you're Wilks? And you know what I mean? Like, you got to but I would have been pissed if
Wilks has been
everybody
dragged.
Knows what you were. What?
He's been dragged all year.
Oh, man.
He's been dragged all year. How about the zero coverage deal where Shanahan's like he screwed that up? When was the last time you heard a coach say about any of his assistant coaches, yeah, he screwed that up?
So we saw this coming.
I mean, this was coming. Yeah, this was coming. Willard and Dibbs asked me Monday. I was on with them. I said, hey, they said all the coaches are coming back. And then Mark took a time and said, hey, do you really believe, I forget exactly how he phrased it, but do you believe Wilks is coming back? And I'm like, no, I don't. I think he's gone. And I didn't think it would happen within 24 hours.
I'm with you. Let's go out. We got a legend. He's one of the best to do it in the Bay Area as far as radio sports callers. Priest in Palo Alto. What's up, baby?
What's going on, fellas? Hey, listen, I've been listening to the back and forth since the beginning, since early in the week.
Okay.
And the problem I have is you guys got a habit of throwing rats on the table, right?
Yep. Brought to you by Atco.
I got one I'd like to just throw on the table.
Let's do it.
This, and nobody wants to say this. The offensive line for the 49ers was better than the offensive line for the Kansas City Chiefs. They protected Purdy better than Mahomes got protected. You have to make throws under duress. It's just that simple. And if you can't do it, you're not winning. Those when he got put under duress, he got the ball off, right? The ball was thrown over our youth's head, right? You got it off. It's got to be thrown so that he has a chance to catch it. Okay? I'm just saying, man, all year long I've been listening to this stuff about how great he is. The great ones make those throws. He's a good quarterback. I'm not saying he's the reason they lost. I'm not saying that at all. But there's levels to this. And I've been saying it all year long. The 49ers had the better team. They should have won that game. I put it on the quarterback and the coach.
Wow.
He got out coached. Mahomes and Kelsey were laughing at them in overtime. They were laughing on the sideline. It made me mad. I'm telling you, man, when they kicked that field goal in overtime, Paul Mahomes looked at Kelsey and cracked a smile like they are stupid. Because this Super Bowl is over. It's over.
Only thing I'll say, Priest, you have to give some credit to Spagnuolo. I thought Spagnuolo's time, he had some time blitzes on some really key downs where he sped up the quarterback. But I'll say this, you didn't see Purdy cower under pressure. You didn't see him turn it over.
Yeah, I know. I didn't say he did. I never blamed him.
But you're saying he didn't make enough big-time throws.
That's the difference between good and great.
Appreciate the phone call, Priest. And again, Larry, I'm being real, man. Your boy, I'll go Major League Baseball, is getting ready to start. I thought Brock Purdy, just even going back to last year, was batting 400. I think he's batting 370. I do not blame him for this loss in the Super Bowl. It was there. It's at his doorstep in regard to the play calling and the protection. He's in year 2 talking about Brock. But where I'm at with Brock Purdy, do I think he's good enough? Yeah. But this year is everything. I'll even call it a tryout, Larry, because if you're telling me they're ready already to give him $40 million, and then we look at him through that prism, boy, it's a big difference. But I disagree with Priest in this sense. They didn't lose the game because of Brock's arm.
No.
There
was a lot of adversity.
I won't do that to Brock.
There was a lot of adversity in this game that, we just have to recognize. I mean, they had a good opening script. They looked really good on that opening drive.
McCaffrey
fumbles. Then, Pacheco fumbles. They can't turn it into anything. Trent Williams with a couple penalties. They fall behind the chains. They got a punt. Mahomes throws an interception. They can't turn it into anything. They got a punt. They got a turnover on a muffed punt. They got a missed PAT. They got their Pro Bowl linebacker, or a guy who should have been a Pro Bowl linebacker, in Dre Greenlaw, go out running onto the field.
Oh my goodness!
I thought Shanahan's play calling got a little too pass happy in the third quarter with a lead. And the other one, and I'm not the kind of guy that likes to blame officials, but dude, I watched. I mean, suddenly we had the 49er defensive line going up against the number one most penalized pass blocking offensive line in the sport, and they drew no penalties. And we have multiple situations where we saw Jawan Taylor bear hugging Nick Bosa. I mean, a bear hug on a star defensive end goes uncalled. So they got some adversity there. They didn't get great calls from the officials. So, I mean, it's just they didn't handle the Kansas City rush well in key moments. But then, go back to Spagnuolo, who went on with Baldy and said, man, we left our zone deal and went to more of a man thing because of Purdy carving us up and making some perfect throws and dicing up our zones. So, but I do understand what you're saying about Purdy's going to get more expensive, and that means the roster is probably going to be more limited around him. And so in a lot of ways, they blew a primo opportunity here because eventually they're going to pay him big money. And when they do, They're not going to have a 40, not going to have a huge check or all these guys making big cash. They're going to have to figure out a way to do it in the draft.
And that's why when you refer to Mahomes or anybody wants to, I'll call him my GOAT or the current GOAT because he's won 2 Super Bowls without the services of Tyreek Hill.
Right.
And you talk about Brock Purdy and what's at his disposal. And I thought he got hate because he had a lot of stuff around him, some luxuries, as you called it earlier. But you look at that 3-game losing streak where Debo wasn't around and Trent wasn't around, and it looked different. And if you want to say, okay, Brock's a different quarterback without a couple of the luxuries, okay. But Patrick Mahomes just showed and middle fingered everybody, Larry, that I could do it without Michael Jackson and Prince. But if that question comes towards Brock Purdy and he loses an Ayuk or a Debo, you do wonder, okay, can he put you on his back and get it done? And I think that's another rat on the table for the Niners coming into next year because we don't know how they feel about his performance in the Super Bowl. I'm not Jaworski, but I don't blame Brock Purdy for that loss. And I thought he did good for himself because I thought we'd be able to see him throwing the ball. Now, was he perfect? No, he missed 15 passes, some turf monsters. But, Larry, I just tell you, man, and I was just trying to hammer home to Steiny, seasons change. They had an opportunity. They've been knocking at the door since 2019. We're talking about 2 Super Bowls, but if you let me interest you in a couple other NFC championship collapses to where you're up 10 against the Rams, we know what happened in Philly. And you know what's crazy? And I'll wrap it up here. They were up 10-0 in this game. Do with that what you will, but it's just like, damn, Larry, it wasn't like they got mollywopped 38-3. That game was right there for the taking. Mahomes was shook, so was Kelsey, so were the Chiefs, and for whatever reason, that Niner offense could not capitalize. No.